and we will say, some evil beast hath desired him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And so, obviously, I mean, again, here's Joseph, and Joseph does not, he doesn't realize what he's walking into. And so the thought this morning is, if you in verse number 2, it says, "These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah and his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more." Hang on one second here. We got it. Sorry, it was echoing really bad up here. So anyway, so they hated him yet the more. And so my thought this morning is a thought about envy, and the danger of envy, that Joseph did not even realize what he was facing whenever he walked up to his brothers. Again, and we talked about how that, really about the only thing Joseph did wrong was told his brothers his dream, and told his fathers his dream. And I mean, he's just telling them, but he did not understand. And I've thought about it myself. I thought about how, have you ever had someone that just didn't like you? And you're like, man, what in the world? Like, well, what did I ever do to that person? What did I ever do to that person? What did I do to offend that person? And a lot of times they don't even tell you. They don't tell you what the problem is. They don't tell you. You just sense it. You just feel it that there's a problem. And so you're like, man, like, what's the big deal? And eventually, maybe a long time down the road, you find out that it was nothing more than envy. You had something they wanted. I got a member of my family, and one of their favorite statements is, "It must be nice." And so anytime someone else gets something, the almost immediate statement out of their mouth is, "It must be nice." And what is that? They just live in a constant state of jealousy. They're never satisfied with the things they have. They're never content with the things they have. They never just look and say, "I tell you what, God sure has blessed me." They always look and say, God must have blessed someone else more than me. And they never look and say, "I tell you what, we sure live a nice life right here. I mean, we drive nice cars, and we live in a nice house, and we have all these things." That thought never crosses their mind, Brother Tyrone, because they're always looking at someone else and say, "They have a nicer car than me. Their car is newer than mine. Their car has less miles on it than mine. Their car does this. Their house is this." And it's just, they can never be satisfied. And honestly, what a miserable life. Some of the most miserable people I know are people who are envious and people who are jealous. They're some of the most miserable people you'll ever meet in your life, because they can't ever be satisfied. They can't just be happy. They just can't just say, "You know what, like everything's good. I'm all good." And it's funny, because you'll see some people, and to us, they're poor, and they don't have a lot, and they don't have nice things. And you look and you're like, "Oh, I feel sorry for that person." But they're some of the happiest people in the world. Why? Why? Because they're not full of jealousy. They're not full of envy. They are just content with the things that God has given them. And so in this chapter right here, we have Joseph's brothers envied him. Actually, if you look in Acts chapter number 7, verse number 9, let me just turn there right quick. In Acts chapter number 7, verse number 9, here is Stephen, and Stephen is giving his account. And in verse number 9, he said, and the patriarchs, moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him. Now, if you think about it, yes, they did sell him into slavery into Egypt, but that was not their desire. That was not their desire. Their desire was to kill Joseph. The best I can tell, we're going to say 8 out of 10, their desire was to kill Joseph. And why was that? There were multiple reasons. Some of the reason was because they were mad at him because, obviously we read in verse number 2 where he brought their evil report. So you have the sons of Zilpah, Gad and Asher, the sons of Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali. You have those that came with, that they were out doing whatever they were doing, and Joseph came and told them, and we talked about that last week. But then because Joseph was their father's favorite, and I read that last week, and we're gonna see it again this week. But we're gonna see it again how that Joseph was his father's favorite. And I said it last week, excuse me. But guess what? If you want to be the father's favorite, do the things that the father wants done, and that's how you become the father's favorite. Or do the things that the father's favorite's doing, and guess what? You got a whole lot better chance of being the father's favorite than trying to destroy the father's favorite. Which is really what they, in their mind, I'm sure they thought once Joseph's gone, Dad's going to have to pick someone new. Once Joseph's gone, Dad's going to have to pick someone new. He's going to have a new favorite. He's going to have to make a new coat of many colors and give one of the other brothers his coat of many colors. And best I can tell, that turned out to be Benjamin. Best I can tell, that turned out to be Benjamin just because of his reaction. Just because of his reaction whenever Joseph said, "I need you to bring your brother down here," and they didn't want to do it, and their father didn't want to do it. And so best I can tell, that turned out to be Benjamin. So all these other boys, they did all that stuff, and it still didn't do them any good. It still didn't do them any good. And so, but they hated Joseph. And some of these boys were good haters. In Genesis chapter 49, and Brother McBride mentioned this chapter a bunch, and Lord willing, we may get to it sometime, because it is quite interesting how that Jacob describes his sons. But in Genesis chapter 49, verse number 5, he says, Simeon and Levi are brethren. Okay, that's pretty good right there. But that's about all the good things he has to say about them. You know what I mean, Brother Parks? I mean, he's like, they're brothers. And sometimes it's a good thing. I mean, we got Sylvanus back there, and Joseph's not in here with us right now. But then we got Jake and Ben are brothers, and Bub and Grady. I mean, sometimes it's a good thing. I mean, last week we had Justin and them in here, and so I mean, sometimes it's a good thing. But this wasn't a good thing. Why? Because they fed off each other. They fed off each other. It says, Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them. So here is a father describing his sons, and do y'all see anything good that he says about them two boys? There's not a good thing he says about them two boys. And we understand the story, we understand the story about Dinah and what they did. But understand, I mean, here's Jacob, and we're talking years later. We're not talking that happened last month, Gabe. We're talking this was 25, 30 years later, and Jacob's still saying, cursed be your anger. And sometimes it's a shame. Sometimes it's a shame. A lot of times you grow out of stuff. A lot of times kids grow out of things. You know what I mean? They have like little personality flaws or whatever, and eventually they just kind of grow up and they mature. But there are some things that you just don't grow up out of, and some things you just don't mature. And if you're an angry man, you're just an angry man. And if God doesn't do something for you, you'll always be an angry man. And if you're a jealous man, guess what? You're always going to be a jealous man. And if you don't pray about it and seek God's face and ask God to change you, you're always going to be a jealous man. And so if you look in Genesis chapter number 4, we're gonna look at an example right here in Genesis chapter number 4, verse number 3. Obviously, this is the story of Cain and Abel. But it says, and in process of time, verse number 3, it says, in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. Now again, I mean, we understand the story. I mean, Cain was in rebellion. He was in rebellion. Apparently, and again, the Bible doesn't say, where God told Adam and Eve, the only offering that I will accept is a sacrificial offering. But apparently, we understand by reading that Cain knew what he was supposed to bring, and Abel knew what he was supposed to bring, and Cain chose to bring something different than what God wanted. It always fascinates me, these people that say, well, God just loves everybody and he's going to accept you who you are. Well, I mean, guess what? He didn't accept Cain how he was. Cain brought an offering. And Riley, I'd say it was a good offering. I believe it said it was of the first fruits. He brought of the fruit of the ground. I mean, he brought an offering. And Chris, I mean, he worked for that offering. He worked for that offering. That wasn't just something that came easy to him. I mean, he had to work. He was tiller of the ground. He had to work for that offering. But he brought that offering, and we understand that offering, he was in rebellion when he brought that offering. But look at verse number 6. And the Lord said unto Cain, why art thou wroth? A lot of times people that are jealous and people are envious, they're envious at someone else, no matter what. And the problem is, Cody, they never just want to turn the finger back on themselves and point the finger back at themselves. Again, at work, someone makes an advancement at work and people are jealous, and you're like, well, what's wrong? Well, why are you so upset? Well, I've been here so many years and I wanted that position. Well, yeah, you've been here. But all you do is this, chink, 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 chink. You just punch a clock. All you do is punch the clock. You're not trying to advance. You're not trying to learn anything. You're not trying to learn anything new. You're not trying to. You appear like you have no ambition, no drive. You just want rewarded just for longevity. And I understand, a lot of union jobs are that way. They do give, they do reward you for being there a long time. But for most places, here in the South, if you work there, if you want to advance, you got to work for it. And so here's Cain, and God says, hey, why are you wroth? And you say to those people that are so angry, Riley, well, why are you so angry? Well, I'm mad at so-and-so. Well, why are you mad at so? Well, because he got this. Well, okay, well, let's figure out why. What have you done to try and get to that position? And they got nothing to say, except I've been here a long time. Or, well, and just fill in the blank, whatever you want to say. How have you worked towards getting that position that other person got? Why does that person have something you don't have? Well, and I don't think anyone in here inherited a lot of money. Really, pretty much everyone in here, if they got something, they're working for it. They're working towards it. They're working for it. And sometimes people, they're like the prodigal son. They waste their money on righteous living. and they don't have anything, and then they're mad at someone who works hard and spends their money wisely, and don't be mad at that person. Be mad at yourself. Be mad at yourself for wasting your money in righteous living. If every time Apple comes out with a new phone, you have to go run down to the store and finance 3, 4, 5 new Apple 15s or Apple 16s for your whole family, and then you're like, well, you know, why do they got a nice car? Why they got a nice house and I don't? Well, it's because you run down to the Apple store and you got $10,000 in phones for your whole family, and they saved that $10,000 and put it down on a car. Again, life's about choices. Life's about choices, and if that's your thing, if you want to have the latest, if your status symbol of choice is the latest iPhone, that's fine. But don't be upset when someone comes rolling in here in a nice new truck, and you're like, man, it'd be nice if I had a new truck. Well, you could if you didn't have 5 new iPhones. And so, but anyway, here's Cain, and God says, why art thou wroth? He said, Cain, I want to talk to you. Why are you so wroth? Why are you so angry? Why are you so angry? He was mad at God, but he wasn't just mad at God, he was mad at his brother. He said, why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? You're all sad looking. I mean, again, sometimes people, they walk around with a sad face. They walk around with a sad face, hoping someone will be like, oh, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? And they just want to tell their sad story. They just want to tell this sad story. And sometimes people have a sad story, Brother Croft, and we as Christians should be there to hear their sad story. But there are certain people that their whole life is just one solid sad story after another. God forgot about them. God's never done anything good for them their whole entire life. I mean, whenever God looked to have an ugly duckling, he said, you're going to be the one. I mean, just everything about their whole entire life is just pitiful. And there are some people that may be that way, but there are some people that they live in that misery. They live in that misery, and they're just looking for someone to say, what's wrong? What's wrong with you today? What's wrong with you today? And they just want to tell their sad story. And so God said, hey, he said, Cain, why? Why are you so wroth? Why is your countenance fallen? Look at what he says in verse number 7. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. Again, it's personal choice. It's all about personal choice. God told Cain, if you do well, you'll be accepted. Again, I think the biggest problem, people who envy, people who are jealous, they do not want to be smacked upside the head with their personal choices. They just want to live in that it's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else, it's somebody else. This guy or that guy or this girl or that girl. And they never want to just sit down and say, if I just do well, I'll be accepted. If I just do well, I'll be accepted. And so here's God. He said, if thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? I mean, here's God. He's having a one-on-one conversation with a rebel, Riley. A one-on-one conversation with a rebel. And he says, hey, if you do well, you'll be accepted. God gave him a choice. All he had to do was go back. All he had to do was go back and get the right offering and bring the right offering to God. And God said, I will accept your offering. And he didn't just say, he just didn't say that he would accept this offering. He said, and if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. If he gave the offering, he's like, hey, Abel's got ahead of me. Abel's got ahead of me now. He's ahead of me now because you accepted his offering, not my offering. And that it should be that way. And God said, hey, if you do well, guess what? You'll be back in your place. But if you don't do well, it's because sin's lying at the door. And I understand there's another picture of that, but we're going to look at it this way, that there's sin is lying at the door. The reason you're acting this way is because sin is to blame. And Cain did not want to hear that. He did not want to hear that. If you talk to someone that's full of jealousy and full of envy, you're in a day. If you try to be the mediator, if you try to be the peacemaker, sometimes have you ever tried to be the peacemaker when, like, again, back to work or even at church? Sometimes people just can't get along, Brother Parks. And I understand people have personality conflicts. We all don't have the same personality. We all don't have the same likes. We all don't have the same dislikes. Some people like to do, some people like to work out. Some people like to play sports. Some people like to play, whatever. Some people, we just don't all have the same personality. And I think that's fine. But then there's another point where it's not just that we don't have the same personalities. I don't like that fella right there. I don't like that fella right there. And because of that, that's what causes issues. It causes issues on the job site. It causes, as long you don't have to hang out with me at 7, 8 o'clock at night after work. But while we're working, as long as we can get along, we can just get things done. And it's the same way in church. We all just don't, we all don't have to go over to each other's houses, but we all ought to at least be able to get along. But there are some people that because of jealousy, because of envy, they let it creep in, and it starts small. I don't think when Joseph came and told on his brothers, when he came and told on his brothers, they thought, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to kill that joker one day." I don't think that's what they thought when he first. They were mad, but I don't think they were mad enough to kill him. But I think after a while they got down there and they got to talking, and a lot of times, whether you're talking at work, whether you're talking at church, whether you're talking at in your just friendships, a lot of times it's because people don't know how not to talk. People don't know how to take their burden to the Lord and leave it there. And they're like, "Hey, do you know what so-and-so did to me? Do you know what so-and-so did to me? Can you believe so-and-so did that to me?" And before long, they're mad, and it wasn't to them, and they never even went over and got the other side of the story and say, "Hey, what happened right here? So-and-so's upset." And you'll have a church split. You'll have a whole church split where, again, a lot of times it's not just one family leaves, Brother Parks. It's 5, 6 families all go at one time. And the pastor didn't even find out about it until it actually blew up that, man, that someone was upset about something. But because they had their little cliques and they had their little groups and they went around and they had these little conversations, then they had half the church stirred up. And they never point their finger back at themselves and say, "Well, just tell me what happened right here. Tell me what happened." And the Bible says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend." Sometimes you have to tell a friend you're just wrong. You're like, "Well, I wouldn't be his friend if I told him he was wrong." No, you're not his friend if you don't tell him he's wrong. If you're not in the position where you can look your friend in the face and say, "Hey, you're wrong," y'all don't have a very good friendship. Because your friendship ought to be stronger than you have to be. He has to tell you you're right all the time, even when you're wrong. And so here's God. God told Cain, "You are wrong." God said, "You are wrong. You're wrong to be angry. You're wrong that your countenance is fallen. You gave the wrong offering, but I'm giving you an opportunity. Bring the right offering and everything will be fine." And we understand that in verse number 8, it says, "And Cain talked with Abel his brother." Who was he mad at? He was mad at God. But he took it out on Abel. Why was he mad at Abel? Because Abel did what he was supposed to. And many, many times I have seen it with my own 4 eyes now. It used to be 2, now it's 4. I guess bifocals, now it's 6 eyes. With my own 6 eyes, I've seen it where someone was wrong and they let that jealousy creep in and they're mad at God, but they take it out on somebody in the church. They take it out on somebody. I mean, I think about my friend that again, I guess they probably saw some pictures of him when we were up in Maryland. But brother Wayne, I mean, like we were like we both kind of came in church at the same time. They moved to our church about the time that I made a false profession. But I started going to church all the time when I made that profession. I didn't get saved till August, but I'd made this profession, and I told you all that story. But so we just kind of became friends, and we just run around together, and we did things together, and we hung out almost every weekend. After I got off work, I'd go over to their house, and I'd spend the night at their house. I mean, just all that stuff, and things started going south in their life. And now he's to the point. I heard the other day his father died a few months ago, and he's still so mad at everybody that he didn't even come to his own father's funeral. He's still just so mad, Brother Leon. He's so angry, and he's never stopped and said, you know, it was me. It was me. I did some things I shouldn't have done. Were there some things that happened that shouldn't have happened? Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know who he's really mad at? He's mad at God. He's mad at God. And he's taking it out on everybody else. To the point that his father died and he wouldn't even come to his own father's funeral. And so here's Cain, and he's so angry. He's so envious at Abel because Abel's offering was accepted and his wasn't accepted. It says, and Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. And the Lord said unto Cain, Where's Abel thy brother? Can you imagine had this also played out just 33 chapters later? In chapter number 37, after they sold Joseph into slavery, what if God had came down to Gad and Asher and Dan and Naphtali and Simeon and Levi and said, hey, boys, where's your brother at? Where's Joseph at? He said, where's thy brother? And he said, I know not. Now he's lying. It's funny how these things they just compound. They just compound. What happened to Joseph and his brothers? After they did it, now they got to lie, and they have to lie. They have to lie for 20 plus years. They have to carry on the same lie. Do you know how hard it is to lie? Because once you lie, then you have to keep lying, and then you have to lie more, and then you have to keep track of all the lies that you've told. It's just so much easier to just tell the truth and be like, well, you know what, this is what I've done, sorry. You can deal with that. But once you tell a lie, you got to tell another lie, you got to tell another lie, and another lie, and another lie, and you got to keep track of all these lies, and who knows the lies that I told, who knows the truth, because I can't have them around whenever I'm telling my lie, because what are you talking about? That isn't how that went. You know what I mean? And so here's Cain, and he's lying to God. Well, what kind of stupidity is that? You're lying to God. God knew Cain was going to kill Abel before he ever killed Abel. And he said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? Now again, like I said, I mean, he's not just lying to God, but he's angry with God. I mean, again, you just put it in a father-son relationship. If my boys talk to me like that, me and my boys, we got problems. We got issues. If your boys talk to you like that, guess what? Riley, y'all got issues. They're going to have bigger issues than I got, but we got issues. And he's talking to God. And again, every problem Cain had was his own problem. Every single problem Cain had was because of Cain. Every time he had a conversation with God, it could have been a good conversation or a bad conversation, but it had to be a bad conversation because of Cain. And so he said, am I my brother's keeper? So here we're having another bad conversation. And God said, and he said, what hast thou done? He said, Cain, what have you done? Like the answer was simple. The answer was simple. Do what your brother did and it'll be accepted. Do what is right, which is what your brother did that you didn't do, and it'll be accepted. But if you want to do your own thing, it's not going to be accepted. And your solution to the problem was not, hey, all I need to do is go get an offering and bring the offering that God asked for and sacrifice that offering and give it to God. That was not the solution. The solution was to kill your brother. Really, the very first instance that we read in the Bible of envy is Cain and Abel. And it's played out this way for 6,000 years now. 6,000 years now that the person who is envious and the person who is jealous refuses to deal with the problem. And that's themselves. Again, I said it earlier, you don't have to have a lot. You don't have to have a lot to be content. You don't have to have a lot to be content. But you can see some of the people that have the most and they're still not content. They're always looking at someone else. And guess what? I think someone was saying the other day that Bill Gates, someone's richer than Bill Gates. Someone's richer than Elon Musk. Or if Elon Musk gets ahead, guess what? There's someone right behind him and they're about to pass him. You can always be chasing it. You can always be chasing it. Or you can just be satisfied. And so here he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield to thee her strength. The thing that Cain loved the most, he lost. He loved tilling the ground. He loved bringing of the fruit of the ground. That was his offering, and he brought that offering and said, God, you accept my offering. And God said, no. And Cain said, I'll fix this. I'll take away my brother Abel, and you'll have to accept the offering I've got because I'm the only one. And you know what God said? No. No again. I'm not going to accept your offering. Even if you are the only one besides your mom and dad, I'm still not going to accept your offering. And not only am I not going to accept your offering, I'm also not going to allow you to have the thing that you love the most in your life, which was tilling that ground. Why? Because he wouldn't deal with the problem, which was Cain. And people who struggle with envy won't deal with the problem, and that's themselves. Had these other boys dealt with the problem, Joseph didn't need to be sold into slavery. Again, a lot of times we read these stories, and what I understand is that God's a big enough God, he could figure out another way to do what he wants to do. And sometimes he can take a terrible mess and make something good out of it, but it didn't have to be that way. It doesn't always have to be that way. And so if you look in Psalm chapter number 37, we'll just read a few passages real quick right here. In Psalm chapter number 37, verse number 12. The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. The wicked have drawn out their sword, and have bent their bow to cast down the poor, and needy, and to slay such as be of upright conversation. The Lord shall enter into their own heart, and the sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. In Proverbs chapter number 14, right here, verse number 29, it says, "He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones." And so you see right here that here's the Solomon, here's the writer of Proverbs, and he said, envy is rottenness in your bones. Have you ever seen you seen someone, and again, I mean, just because of their spirit, just because of their attitude, that you realize like that person is sickly. That person is sickly. Why are they sickly? Because they're so angry, because they're so jealous, because they're just so full, they're just so much in turmoil inside. And they just can't let anything go, Brother Jay. They just can't let it go and give it to God. And so it says, envy is rottenness of the bones. In chapter number 24, he says in verse number I wrote the wrong verse down. Anyway, but that is the one that says about who is able to stand before envy. Again, in James chapter number 3, verse number 14. In James chapter number 3, verse number 14, he says, "But if ye have bitter envy and strife in your hearts, glory not." Some people are proud of it. Some people are proud. They're proud of it. And here's James saying, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion in every evil work. You say, it's just a little bit of envy. It's just a little bit of jealousy. The problem with a little bit of anything is it grows. Again, like I said earlier, it grows into something. I don't think Joseph's brothers, if you'd asked them whenever his father brought out that coat of many colors and said, "Hey boys, I want y'all to see this coat," and they all looked at it and said, "Man, Dad, that's a beautiful coat," and he said, "Yeah, I'm going to give it to Joseph." Again, I understand it's an awkward situation. I understand you got 12 boys and he's got a favorite. I understand all that's awkward, but it wasn't Joseph's fault. Just like Cain was mad at God, those boys could have and should have been mad at Jacob for picking a favorite. But again, they also should have pointed the finger at themselves and said, Simeon and Levi should have said, probably didn't handle that situation correctly. And Reuben should have said, I tell you what, if there's one way I ought to make my dad mad at me is to do what I did to my dad's concubine. Again, they all could go down through a list and say, I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this, and they get to Joseph and be like, I tell you what, that Joseph, he just don't do anything wrong. And there's no reason to be mad at Joseph because he doesn't do anything wrong. It's a time to be mad at yourself because of how you acted. And so here, James is like, hey, look, guys, every evil work comes from envy. That's where you're going to find it. You're going to find it. If you get down all the way to again, I'm not a gardener. My wife was talking about wanting to garden yesterday, and she was talking to someone, and she was talking about a garden, and I told y'all my story about a garden. But anyway, I'm just not a gardener. But I understand how to garden. And you drop just the tiniest seed. You drop the tiniest seed, and it grows into something big and produces fruit. Guess what? If you plant the tiniest seed of envy in your heart right now, it is eventually going to produce fruit. It's going to produce it. It's going to produce it. And it's going to produce, again, that envy fruit is going to, that fruit that coming off of a seed of envy is not going to be good fruit. The Bible says every evil work. Guess what? I think if I understand correct, be like, hey, let me see here. God wants me to do good things, and He wants me to do right things. He wants me to be holy, and He wants me to live righteous, and He wants me to live peaceably with all men. Let me see what I don't want to plant in my life. What I don't want to plant in my life is the seed of envy. That's what I don't want to plant in my life. And if I have planted the seed of envy in my life, I want to do what God gave the opportunity to Cain, but he chose not to do it. And when God says, hey, what's your problem? Just tell him what your problem is, Cody. Just tell him what your problem is, and then accept what he says about it. Again, a lot of times we're not necessarily mad at Bub. We're mad at God, but we're taking it out on Bub. We're not necessarily mad at our father-in-law. We're mad at God, and we're taking it out on our father-in-law. And so if God has pointed something out in your life, you need to deal with it. You need to deal with it and get that thing out of there. Back when I was a kid, the field there below the church was an alfalfa field, Bub. They mow it now. By the way, y'all, last time, I know time's about up. Last time we were up there, this guy was mowing it, and he had a riding lawn mower. And Riley, it reminded us all, old Paps, he had two push mowers connected to the riding lawn mower. So he turned that 60-inch deck into about a 80 or 90-inch deck, because he had two push mowers connected to the back of the lawnmower, and he was mowing that big old field. I think I'd have just got me a tractor or something, but he was making it do with what he got. But when I was a kid, or when I was a teenager, that was an alfalfa field, and we cut the hay off of that alfalfa field. And there was, again, I'm not an expert, but my dad called it, I think, dock. And so there were these weeds that would come up. And my dad would make me walk out in the field and pull the weeds up by the roots. And I'm like, Dad, that's ridiculous. But he's like, if you leave it, it's going to keep spreading. And every time it spreads, there's going to be more and more and more. And it's going to ruin my alfalfa field. And so, but I used to just I'm like, Dad, because my sister lived back there, and all, like I said, the church was up here, and my sister lived over here, and that whole field was that way. And if we went to my sister's house, rode down the driveway, we come riding down the driveway, and my dad's like, all right, son, get out. I see a piece right over there. And I'd have to trudge out through the field, pull it up, bring it back, throw it in the back of the truck, because I wasn't even allowed to leave it in the field. And so, well, guess what? I mean, yes, I thought, as a child, I thought that was ridiculous. But now as a grown adult child, I no longer think that's ridiculous, because I understand and I can make the application in my own life that if you leave something out there, it's going to grow. And the only way to get it out of the field is to go out there and pull it up by the roots and take it and get rid of it. And so had these boys, back to Joseph, had those boys dealt with that jealousy when it came up, it never would have got to the place where they said, let's just kill him. Their solution to the problem was the same solution that Cain came to the problem. We understand that Reuben wanted to save him, and Judah sold him into slavery to keep him from it. But I didn't read that far. But the discussions while he was in the pit was still, we're going to kill him. Reuben thought he rescued him, but he walked off and said, well, maybe I get them boys to walk off too, and then I'll run around and get him, and then get him back to the house real quick. That didn't work out. And Judah's sitting there and said, boys, I tell you what, it's not worth killing him. But their solution to the problem was the same solution that Cain came to the problem. Cain came up with, and that's get rid of Abel. If I get rid of the one that's doing right, we're grading on a curve here. If we're grading on a curve and the example's all the way up here, then I don't look very good. But if we take him out, if Reuben says, hey, if I compare myself to Simeon and Levi, I don't look that bad. Simeon and Levi looked at Reuben and said, well, at least we didn't do that. And all these other brothers are like, well, so if we can just get rid of Joseph, we'll be better off. And a lot of times your solution is, if I just get rid of this person in my life that I'm envious of and I'm jealous of, then I won't have any problems. And you never actually look, and the real problem is you. Thank you.